let me start off by telling you a little story. When I was about 7 years old, I remember being around a bunch of older kids that were 10, 11, whatever. And they were throwing baby frogs against the wall. And they were splattering them. And I remember being really freaked out by it, and they wanted me to join them in, join in with them. I was like, no way, and I ended up freaking out and crying and going home and telling my mommy. If I remember right, my mommy went out and stopped them, but when I was up this morning, I was refreshing my Facebook, and I had gotten into an argument with a bunch of people who wanted to put down one Christian group for their beliefs versus another Christian group. And this is something I do almost every day. I study endlessly so I can argue these arguments, and I mean, I've been doing it, what now, 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean,
Plus.
that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, arguing against other Christians to defend points in Christianity. And God brought that story back to my mind, and suddenly it occurred to me that all these studies lead me right back to one place, and that's that heart of a child that I had back then. So I started looking in the scriptures, looking for things about it. And if you got a Bible, that's cool. If not, I'm going to read it anyways. In Matthew 18, verse 3, Jesus says, and I'm going to read from the NASB, so it might be different than y'all's Bibles.
18?
Yeah.
18:3?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
You're well trained, Ed.
Yeah, I have that yes, ma'am down pretty good.
Okay.
So he says, well, actually this is kind of in the middle of the phrase, but I'm going to go with, truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And I was thinking about that. If we think about the spirit and the flesh, in Galatians 5:12, Paul tells us that they oppose each other. And I never thought of it as exact opposites, but it really, really is if you think about what Jesus and the apostles taught and what happens in the flesh. As we get older in the flesh and more experienced, we're supposed to be stronger, we're supposed to be able to take on more, we're supposed to be able to handle the world. In Christ, as we get more mature in the spirit, we actually let go, and we let God, and we let Him take over, and we become more and more like children. And I was thinking of that story of the frogs because as a child I didn't know how to deal with that. The flesh would have either picked up a frog and splatted it or fought those kids to stop them. Instead I ran home to mom. In the spiritual battles I'm facing now, more and more I'm finding myself running to God and saying, you know what, it doesn't matter if a person believes exactly as I do. What matters is, do they love Jesus Christ? Do they know Jesus Christ? There's so many groups out there that are backbiting and killing each other. And I don't literally mean deaths in most cases. In most cases, in America, it's just spiritual killing generally. But if you don't believe in the Trinity the exact same way, or if you don't worship on Sunday and you worship on Saturday, or you don't read the right Bible, you're not saved. Well, that's all garbage. And that's all stuff that man puts in place of the truth. Jesus isn't going to come and deny you your salvation because you read a New International Version or a King James or a NASB. He's going to accept you based on the love you feel in your heart. And that's going to be based on how much of a child you can be with Christ. And by a child, I don't mean an immature little kid. I mean how much you actually are willing to lean on Him. How much are you really willing to trust Him for? Because when we work at our lives, a lot of times we're not leaning on Him, I have an ambition to one day become a pastor, established in a church, and lead people to Christ and help minister them. But it's never going to happen unless I let God do it. I can do all the studying, I can take all the tests, I can go get the doctrines and all that. I've met pastors like that. They're not necessarily ministers, and they're not necessarily pastors. They're just well-read. You can find that in any topic, any subject. So the whole point, and this is, like I said, a short word, is let go and let God. Be a child in the Spirit. Don't be afraid to say, I can't do this. I need you, Father. Don't be afraid to accept the fact that you're never going to have all the answers. That sometimes you can just simply look at someone who wants to argue with you and go, I I'm giving it to God. You know, you can be right if you want to, brother, but I'm just gonna give it to God and let Him be right. And that's it.
Yeah, I love that because I find myself, especially at work, a lot of non-Christian, people in work, this one kid, seeing him all day, and I find us kind of getting into these little debates. And he'll start to ask a question, and I'll show it. I'm like, he just believes you know the Bible is a bunch of stories. I've gotten to the point where I can't argue, I can't force feed it to him. I have to let my preaching be not words.
Exactly.
You have to
Your
be,
actions,
you have
not.
Yeah.
Right.
I need to use my words to preach to him and to do my job, to do it unto the Lord.
and God will open the door for you somewhere. He'll see you do something
Yeah.
because you're doing it to Christ, and He'll go, "What was that?" You know, and something will click. It's funny because I was thinking about this all day, and eventually this will be a real sermon that I present somewhere whenever I get the opportunity. But children are so innocent in everything, you know. And if we're supposed to, it's weird because if we're supposed to come to the Father like children, how can we be these learned men of God where, you know, I'm a doctor in divinity. What the heck is a doctor in divinity anyways, you know? I don't mean to disrespect those guys, but when it comes time to line up and go before the Father, He's not going to go, "Oh, you have a doctorate in divinity? Come on in. I don't even need to talk to you, buddy. You're safe." You know, we're all sinners. We're all children in His eyes, and I think that's forgotten. And like you're talking about debating with I guess an atheist essentially, maybe an agnostic. I don't know what he
Well, he
believes.
says he believes in Jesus, but I think he was kind of contradicting himself in the fact that he said he believed in Jesus one minute, but he doesn't believe that the stories in the
He might
Bible are
believe
real.
Jesus, but he doesn't know Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that when you had told me about what you were going to, the word, is that when you think about children, what do children have? They have trust, right? Innocence and trust. And they don't question. Mom says don't do it, or a teacher says do it, or whatever. Most children at a certain age trust. And I really think that that's a huge thing that we have. Once we get to be adults, we become calloused and hardened, and there's been some dings and bruises on our emotions that we don't trust as easily as
Well,
children
if
do.
you think about it today versus 50 years ago, even, like you guys might go, "Oh, kids misbehave all the time." 50 years ago, kids obeyed up until 18, really. You know, kids were
Yeah.
terrified to go against their parents.
You said, no, you got the belt.
That's
That's
right.
right, yeah,
And you
yeah.
knew you were going to get
Switch,
it. Yeah.
right?
That was it. And I mean,
Switch.
nobody wants to, you know, like I'm not one who likes to beat children at all, but the principle of discipline is gone now. And that's why, like, I work in an elementary school, and I see kids all the time, 8, 9, 10 years old, telling teachers to go F themselves. That never happened even in high school back in the 50s, you know. Well, maybe a little James Deanish, but okay, go to the 40s, and you wouldn't find it, you know what I mean? You go back far enough, and there's generations where the kids just didn't do what they're doing today. And I believe that's all got a lot to do with the end times, and I think it's a lot of erosion. A quick little story about an experience I had. And I know this affects everybody, but not everybody will agree with it, not everybody recognizes it. Is when I was growing up and they told me Santa Claus was fake, they told me the Easter Bunny was a lie, they told me the Tooth Fairy was a game. That shattered a lot of my ability to believe in God, at least at that time. And for me, it was a complete, I was like, well, I'm not going to believe in Jesus if all that was fake. I'm sure they're lying about this too. But I think it really tarnishes a child's ability to continue believing in things they cannot see, for instance. And I think it's a trap from Satan. Now, I've met 99% of the Christians I've talked to about this say, well, it's for the children, and it didn't really hurt my beliefs, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, okay, so are you able to raise the dead? Are you able to heal the sick? Are you able to prophesy? Do you speak in tongues? Do you have the gifts of the Spirit flowing freely, or do you have trouble with them? And we know most people do. Most people can't even get up here and speak in tongues because they just don't believe it really happens anymore. And that is a side effect of the society that tells them this is real and then goes, no, not really. Now you gotta lie to the kids. You're 10 years old now, you know Santa's not real, but you gotta pretend because your 7-year-old brother believes him still. And
Right.
So we teach them how to lie.
well, it teaches us a spiritual deception
It's family time, you know?
It actually eats at the core of our
Okay, put on the
heart.
face.
And I mean, that's a whole nother, sermon in itself, and it's one that will probably never be accepted by the Christian church, because I'm sure you guys, you may even feel it in your own hearts, going, well, no, wait a minute, man, I like you saying, I don't know, but I know a lot
Just
of,
right up the road.
I know a lot of Christians, they freak out, like my own son has told me, my son will believe in Santa Claus, my son will believe in Easter, you don't do that, Dad, and I have to respect that, but the bottom core is, I told him when he was like 6 or 7 years old, yeah, Santa's fake. I couldn't lie to him anymore. I mean,
And then people look at you and they yell, they're like, dude, what are you doing?
they do.
Why are you going to tell them that? It's for the children.
But the benefit of it is, if I'm straight with my kid about Santa when he's 6, he's going to believe me when I'm straight with him about Jesus when he's 16, And I'm not saying that would have prevented any kid from going astray. We all go astray. We all have our time of perdition. But it will help them in the long run, like, I didn't come back to Christ till I was 32. And it took a miracle. Literally, God resurrected a kitten in my hand. And that sounds silly, and I'll share that testimony with you guys sometime, but the Holy Spirit literally entered my body, healed a kitten, and then God was kind of sitting there going, now what you going to do? You either believe me now or you don't, and if you go the other way, my hand's off your life. And I didn't want his hand off my life, so. Yeah, I guess that wasn't all I had.
Never
But
is.
That's good. But it's just been hitting me all day long. And now I'm just going to stop fighting the battles as hard as I have been. I mean, you've probably seen some of them on YouTube. I have like, a dozen videos against the King James only people, and videos against this, and videos against that.
Yeah. Because you look at him through the eyes of Jesus. You don't look at him as that person that's trying to come at you. You look at him like, how would Jesus look at that person?
And I'm
He
looking
would
at all
love him.
these guys at work, and they're all in the flesh, they're all swearing all day and just telling dirty jokes, and it's like, but I'm looking at them all with love now, and God's really been speaking to me. Love is so much more important.
Are you starting to be able to separate like their sinful nature from like just the core of the person? Because that we have a guy in this congregation who I won't name because he'll probably kick my butt if I did. But
Yeah,
day
John.
one,
Jeez.
yeah, from day one, this guy has always irritated me. And I have to tell you, the last 3 times I've seen him, it's gotten better and better and better.
And we got a guy like that at our church.
Yeah. But I know what Robbie's talking about though, it's that amazing feeling when he's still sitting there doing the things that irritated me 6 weeks ago, but now they just don't seem to matter, because there's a heart in there, and I know there's a heart in there. I know that he loves God, I know that he's trying his best, and I know that he's not doing those things intentionally to upset me, but God has put him there so that I have to learn how to stretch myself, so the next guy who comes along and does something like him, I won't go, oh, it's doing it. No, I'll go, breathe, I can handle this. That's
Yeah, and
amazing.
it's like, I look at them and I'm like, well, he was a little boy. It's like, he wasn't
Always so jaded.
Yeah, like I see him like, oh my god, well I try to like look at these people and they were all little kids, like they're all innocent.
Yeah.
And we grow up and we get corrupted by the world, by media, by all this other crap. And it's like, yeah, you have to look at the core, you have to look at the heart, and like, they might put on a hard face or like that, but all talk like deep down, they're questioning. Like I heard this kid Jason, the kid I work with, say, he asked for the other guys, like, what is the key to life? And I know deep down he really wants to know, and it's like, God's kind of softening his heart right in front of me. He's pretty hard still, but I know that, I'm just trying to see that heart and innocence in that, to know that each and every one of them is really like deep down wants to know the truth of life. I'm like, why am I here on earth? Like, this place creeps me out. Because it's so like surreal. It's like just the way the trees grow, just earth. It's weird.
Well, we could go on forever about how creation praises him. I mean, science will tell you one thing, but the truth of the matter is, there's just way too many coincidences for it all to be a coincidence. Like I crack up when they talk about evolution, and like mathematicians will work on the statistics, and statistically it's impossible for life to have formed on this little planet in the middle of the galaxy in the middle of this big universe. Like everything was designed in such a way so that life can be here.
The calculations are just so perfect. It just couldn't have happened on its own.
Well, it theoretically could, but it's next to, like it's, the percentage of it being impossible, all of it falling into place this way is impossible. Like maybe it's possible that there would be a planet rotating in the sun at the
I
perfect
feel
heat.
like everything's interconnected.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I feel like I have a weird mind, like I'll look at something, could be something really little, like, I don't know, let's just say,
Like a bug.
yeah. I don't know, like
And like if you swat that bug, you're gonna affect somebody 3 blocks away perhaps, or,
signs or billboards or like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
your name or something, it could like.
You can see it in her, she's like, dude, what the heck are you
No,
talking about?
Just everything's
You
so
look so
interconnected,
confused.
I'm right, because I only heard half. You want to hit a bug, but you don't because it's got somebody's
No, that's
brain.
what
That's
I
what
said.
he said.
Because what?
He was
He
talking
was
about
saying that his
connection.
mind, when he looks at just like the little things, it feels like everything's connected.
interconnected.
And he goes, I don't know what like a little thing, so I said a bug, and he said,
What, like if you smash a bug, it'll affect a guy 3 blocks away? Welcome to the conversation,
Yeah.
honey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was taking notes.
But the science
So if
thing,
I
Yeah,
kill a
good
bug,
enough.
somebody will die from that or something. I don't know.
yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
but the science thing, like you were talking that one time about being in a bar and that movie
Yes.
War of the Worlds came on. I understand that kind of stuff because that's happened to me before too, where you're just sitting there and something, it's something totally unrelated, but something about it speaks to you in a
Yeah.
completely different way than the creator
People
ever
will be
meant.
like, you can't hear God audibly. They'll ask me, have you ever heard God audibly? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
And they're like, no. I'm like, yeah.
yeah.
And to me, yeah, it was audible. It was through Tom Cruise.
Well, you know what I love about that? I love to tell people I hear the voice of God. And they say, well, if you hear voices in your head, you're crazy. And I'm
Right.
like, no, I hear one voice. I don't hear voices.
Voices.
There's
And
only
I hear
one
voice.
voice.
God through like people at work and they don't even know it.
Yep.
It's like, through songs, like music. I'm like, I
And
just
sometimes
said,
it's not even Christian music, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Country.
song.
Oh yeah, I
Well, what
hear that
song
a
was
lot.
it?
Like
Hey man, what do you got against country
I
music?
love country.
I love
Peter
country,
Gabriel,
yeah.
In Your Eyes.
Yep.
That's an old classic. I just downloaded it the other night because I hear God in that song. It has nothing to do with God. It's a
No,
song
it
about
really
love.
Yeah.
A love
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
But I feel God in it. I'm like, oh Lord.
Did you cry on that one too?
I cry every time I hear something like that.
One day and I was like, oh, I like this. I'm like, who sings this song? You gotta find out. So I turn it up. And he speaks to me. And he's like, looks at me like, what? Are you crazy? Like,
Yes, I am.
and I'm like, it's speaking to me right now. He's like, you're nuts. I'm like, yeah, I know.
So this is great,
That's
but what
awesome.
time do we have?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
So we should close up in prayer.